Although from 1434 to 1494 the Medici family was the unofficial ruler of Florence, they covertly manipulated the city government residing in the Palazzo dei Priori, while they themselves lived in their private palace, one of the gems of lavish Renaissance urban residences. The palazzo was commissioned by the first really powerful Medici, Cosimo il Vecchio, who, after having been exiled, returned in glory to Florence, and in 1445 entrusted his favorite architect, Michelozzo, to create a family house fit for his stature. The result is an austere, perfectly balanced, at the same time domineering building situated next to San Lorenzo, the Medici parish church. The most heartwarming part is the courtyard, which in the 15th century was decorated with excellent artworks by Donatello and other artists. The most extravagant and expensive part of the palace was the chapel, built of highest quality stones and decorated by Benozzo Gozzoli, who represented the family members among the crowd, escorting the three magi proceeding towards the birthplace of Jesus. In 1540, however, Cosimo I, representing the new generation of autocratic Medici, decided to move from the palace to the Palazzo dei Priori, thus turning it into a ducal residence. The next step of enlargement was the creation of the Uffizi, that is, the administrative offices, a huge complex designed by Giorgio Vasari. Today the building is decorated by statues of outstanding Florentine artists, headed by Cosimo il Vecchio, Pater Patriae. The Uffizi is now one of the most famous museums on earth and is a storehouse of many legendary Renaissance artworks. It is a public museum since 1765. Let's have a look at some of the world-famous paintings. Two pieces by Andrea del Castagno, representing Petrarch and Filippo Scolari, who became a Hungarian nobleman, was Pippo of Osora. The Madonna by Giotto, then Piero Francesca's famous portraits of the Duke and Duchess of Urbino. There are many Botticellis. A young man's portrait is overshadowed by the Primavera and the birth of Venus. The Annunciation of Leonardo. Madonnas and portraits by Raphael, including the Medici Pope Leo X. Here is Michelangelo's Sacra Familia and Titian's Venus of Urbino. From among post-Renaissance paintings, most famous are Caravaggio's Medusa and Canaletto's Venetian cityscape. At one point we reach Vasari's famous corridor, from where we have a nice view over the river Arno. In 1550, Cosimo I acquired the unfinished Palazzo Pitti on the southern side of the Arno, to be developed as his future ducal residence. As the enlargement started, he entrusted Vasari to create an entirely private corridor to connect it with his actual residence. Since a new palace was to emerge, the Palazzo della Signoria became called the Old Palace, Palazzo Vecchio. The corridor moved from it through the Uffizi and the Ponte Vecchio, via Santa Felice Church to the Pitti Palace. The core of the present palace dates from 1458 and was originally the town residence of Luca Pitti, a Florentine banker. The building was sold in 1550 to Eleonora of Toledo, wife of Cosimo I. Originally the place was used to lodge official guests, but in 1587 Ferdinando I decided to move into it permanently. It also houses the enormous art collection of the Medici, but most famous is for its Boboli gardens, filled with various Mannerist artworks, fountains and caves. The late Renaissance and early Baroque builders of Florence, Cosimo I and Ferdinando I, were commemorated on imposing equestrian statues by the representative sculptor of the age, Gian Bologna. Their monuments complete our journey through the precincts of power in the town, but the exploration of Florence's Renaissance treasures is to be continued.